is a diplomate of the Philippine Board of Psychiatry and a fellow of the Philippine Psychiatric Association. She completed her Doctor of Medicine at the University of the Philippines and her psychiatry training at UP Philippine General Hospital. With her extensive experience in psychiatry and behavioral medicine, she has dedicated her career to helping individuals and families build healthier relationships. Everyone, let us give a warm welcome to Dr. Rita Esguerra.
Good morning. Good morning. Nice to see some familiar faces. I've been here in Cebu 5 years ago. I was practicing here for 5 years before I transferred back to Manila. So it's nice to see people who I have met before in Southwest when I was a mentor here. And I'm happy to see so many parents this morning, and also a bit nervous because you're a lot. But I see it as a good sign, because I see that you are here because you want to become good or better parents, right? And for that, maybe we can give each other a big round of applause for being here and wanting to learn to be good parents. Okay, and another good news is you're not alone. Okay, actually, for more than 75 years, a lot of people have been doing research precisely on this topic, on parenting styles and how they affect the child's development. So, as you see, it's a very interesting topic. People have been wanting to know more because we want to influence our society. Because of course, the family is the core, right, of society. It's the basic element of society. So if we're able to take care of our families, especially as parents, to be able to raise good children, then we will be contributing much to society in general. Okay, so let's start. Okay. Nice. Okay, so just a brief review of our objectives for this morning. We'll just try to identify the different parenting styles, understand the effect of parenting styles in a child's development, and discuss some practical tips on parenting. Okay. So let me start with attachment theory. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it's a theory that has been developed by several psychologists studying what they call attachment. So what's attachment? Okay. It's the deep emotional bond formed between a child and their caregiver. Isn't it when also a mother delivers a baby? No? The first thing that the doctor does is to put the baby in your chest, or proximate to you. Why? Because that helps develop attachment. Okay? Attachment not in the sense that it's not just physical attachment, but it's more of a psychological, emotional bond that lasts throughout the relationship. So imagine that first encounter with your baby outside your womb creates an impact on the child and as she goes through adulthood. So that's how important it is. That's why also in parenting, for example, breastfeeding is also encouraged because it's also a form of having that close contact with the child, even as early as infanthood. So attachment is affected by these two factors, nurturance and responsiveness. So when a child experiences that a parent is responsive to her needs, to his or her needs. Sorry, I'll talk about it in her, okay? Because this is how it goes. So when a child realizes that this parent, her parent is dependable because the parent is able to respond to her particular needs, then this promotes what we call a secure attachment. Security, right? All of us need security, right? Even as we are now adults, there is that aspect in us which makes us feel better if we know we are secure in our relationship, in our economic stability, right? So when there is good attachment, attachment, there is security, okay? Such that a child feels comfortable exploring the world, but also finds it easy to come back because she is aware that there is a secure haven and a secure base for her. What do I mean by this? When a child feels secure, okay, she's not afraid to explore the world, okay, to go out. Think of your toddlers, right? The toddlers really like to explore. They go out, they're very, how do you call it? They like to touch things, to explore. They like to dismantle things because they want to know how things work, right? And then, so when they explore, if they're secure, then they're not afraid, no, to go out of, or to leave their parents because they know, it's okay. Then, what happens? So they explore, but also they have that security to come back because they know that their parents will still accept them, will care for them, loves them. Okay, so I'll show a short video. It's by this organization called Circle of Security. I'm not in any way connected with them, but I also encountered, or I got to know about this particular website or this particular organization when I took a course in Navarre. So it's one of the things that they also presented to us. And I think it gives us a good explanation of how it is to have a secure haven and a secure base. Okay? It's short.
Parents, we all wonder if we're getting it right. We want to know we're meeting our children's needs, helping them grow, and giving them all that we can. We try to combine our own experience of being parented with the advice of others and our own instincts and beliefs about what is best. And still, we so often worry that we're not succeeding. In a world that is always offering the next best parenting solution, the circle of security is based on decades of attachment research. Unlike many behavioral perspectives, it offers relationship tools to provide a new way of understanding your children's needs, creating lasting security for them and more satisfaction for you. The circle graphic has been created to help you know what to look for, so you can read your children's behavior to guide you in meeting their needs. It's really not complicated. People of all ages have attachment needs. These needs can be divided in 3 ways. Let's look at this child. First, he needs to know the freedom and confidence to go out and explore his world. Second, he needs to feel assured that whenever he's ready, he can come back for comfort and protection. Third, he needs his caregiver to be in charge in a kind way. 3 basic needs that can be thought of as going out on the circle, coming in on the circle, and hands on the circle. Let's have a look in more detail. Feeling safe and supported, our children want to discover their world. When going out, they need to know that their exploration is encouraged, that we're right there watching over them, delighting in them, offering help when needed, and ready to enjoy their new adventures with them. And when they're coming in, they need us to refill their emotional cup. This means organizing their emotions and letting them know we are delighted to welcome them back, protect, comfort, and understand them. The key for us as parents is to remain strong and kind while knowing when to encourage their going out into the world and how to be available to welcome them back to us. It's crucial that we learn to identify our children's needs like this, because misreading them, or worse, missing them altogether, can cause pain and frustration. We all know how uncomfortable it can be to be held too close when we want to be out exploring, or kept at a distance when we need emotional support, or simply to be without someone who is bigger, stronger, wiser and kind, who we can trust to understand what we need when we're feeling lost, confused, or out of control. When a child misbehaves, the cause is often rooted in how safe and secure they're feeling. So it's not surprising that they behave well when a parent learns to tune into their child's needs on the circle in this way. And because our needs on the circle never disappear, learning to read cues can help you better understand and meet the needs of people of all ages, including your own. So that's all there is to it. Just know that at any given moment, your child is somewhere on the circle asking you to meet a need. Support my going out. Welcome my coming in. Be the hands that keep me safe by staying in charge and committed to helping me feel connected. And please remember this, there's no such thing as perfect parenting. At Circle of Security, we've come to realize that good enough is, well, good enough. All of us are going to miss needs on the circle time and again. Welcome to the club. But if we meet our children's needs enough of the time, the results will be happier, healthier, more secure children, and parents too.
Okay, so I hope that enlightened you as to what I was talking about in terms of attachment and security, having that secure base and secure haven. So we all need it already in our adult life. We also need a certain sense of security and attachment. Okay, so first let's define what's parenting. Of course, it's something instinctive, I guess, for all of you, but just to have a commonality of terms. So parenting is the process of raising children and providing them with the care, guidance, and support necessary for their healthy development and well-being, encompassing physical, emotional, social, and cognitive needs. So, if you look at it, it's really developing the person in all his or her integrality, right? So, parenting is not easy, therefore, because one has to consider all these aspects, right? All this physical, emotional, social, and cognitive needs of a child, with the goal of, one, ensuring children's health and safety. Again, this health not only pertains to physical health, but also mental health, psychological health, spiritual health as well. Preparing children for life as productive adults. So here you see that we're looking at the present, projecting our child into the future. So what we do now as parents, help our children know how they will face the challenges of the future. And then transmitting cultural values. So of course, each of you probably have your own values that you would want to transmit to your children. I remember I'm also a consultant in Woodrose, so I go there once a month. And then one thing that caught our attention, one child, for example, was anyway, we're helping her with bullying. But anyway, she's the type who just likes to kid with other children, etc. And then at one point, I think she's also the type who would defend herself. Like for example, when someone accidentally hits her, then since she knows Taekwondo, she's very good at it. Okay, then she uses her skill, to fight back. Of course, that got the attention of the school because, of course, that cannot happen. We have to know also how to control ourselves. So when we talk to the parents, or when they talk, the guidance counselors talk to the parents. So the parents explained, because that's what we taught our child. We don't want her to be bullied, so we taught her how to defend herself. Precisely why they enrolled her in Taekwondo. Because the idea is that they value that their child knows how to defend herself. So how do you deal with that? Because the school also has its own values, and the parents also, they have their own values which they are actually trying to inculcate and to teach their child. So there has to be a meeting of minds and values in that. So what was the resolution? To talk, to dialogue, and see how we could meet a certain, a meeting of minds and goals for the child. Okay, but there, you see how important also that is. For example, also in parenting, of course, parenting most of the time composed of two, the father and the mother. So here also is the need to be able to agree between the two of you. Like, do I have the same values as my husband or as my wife? Because there also, it's important because if a child senses that the other's values are not the same as the other parent, then it confuses the child. Who do I follow? Okay, and here comes in the favoritism, or okay, the values of dad seem to be less rigid or more flexible, then I will go with my father or I will go with my mother, etc. So it has to be consistent, and the parents would have to agree on that. Okay? So, it's okay. So let's go to the parenting style. Okay, so based on studies by Martin and Macoby, they explored parenting styles studying these two axes. One is the demandingness versus responsiveness. So demandingness is how a parent imposes, for example, rules or sets expectations for a child. Responsiveness is being able to nurture, to respond to the needs as we were talking about a while ago. So they tried to look into these two different factors, and they saw 4 types of parenting. So, for example, just based on this figure, if one has high demandingness and exhibits low responsiveness, then one falls into the authoritarian type of parenting. And then, if one has low responsiveness, low demandingness, then one falls into the neglectful. On the other hand, if you have high responsiveness and low demandingness, then one falls into the permissive. And then, if one shows high demandingness and high responsiveness, then that's authoritative parenting. So we'll go through it one by one. Okay, so the authoritarian parenting. This is when a parent shows, I think it's really skipping. Skip this slide about parenting. So these are the different aspects of how we form or how we parent. Okay, so when we try to think, what is my parenting style? These are the different aspects that we can look into and see where are we or how are we doing or what type of, how am I in that particular aspect in order to see, okay, what is then my parenting style? So, rules and punishment, for example. So, how do you describe your rules and punishment? Either one could be permissive, when there is minimal rules and punishment. If there's too much rules and punishment, then one falls into the rigid. And of course, the midpoint is the flexible. And then vigilance. How watchful are we of our children? So if we're not vigilant, then we fall into neglect. And then if there's excessive vigilance, there's too much control. Okay? Then the midpoint is attention, adequate attention. Then protection. Protection, when one doesn't seem to care about her child, then that's abandonment. And then if too much protection, then there's hyperprotection. And in the midpoint is care. And then respect for otherness, meaning you respect that your child is another person. You don't possess the child. Okay? So if there's a deficiency in respect, there could be rejection, or on the other hand, intrusion. Like going beyond your boundaries in dealing with your child. And then if there's an excess of respect, then there's indifference, meaning, okay, she's too other naman, but she's not anymore part of you, like she's not even like your child because you don't care anymore about what she does. So there's too much respect for her being an independent person. And then at the midpoint is acceptance. Then we can look at affective implication. How affectionate are you to your child? So you could fall into the deficient, which is coldness, or the excess, which is overprotection. And then availability. If one is not available for the child, then she's absent or and then if there's an excess, there's invasion. And then the midpoint is proximity. Communication. Deficient communication can have silence or imposition. Okay, silence because you don't communicate at all. Imposition because you're the one always talking. And there's no dialogue, which is what is needed in the midpoint. If excess communication, there is dialogue somehow, but you don't reach an agreement, conclusion. Okay? And then demand. If there's no demand, then that's negligence. If there's too much demand, that's hyper demand on the child. So what we want to be is on the midpoint, which is to have that proportionate demand. Okay? So these are just aspects. So now we will go into different types of parenting. Okay, we've gone through that. The next. Okay, authoritarian. So when one falls into authoritarian, remember the chart. That's high demandingness you demand too much, but low responsiveness. So it's based on imposition of values and behavior on the part of parents who are controlling and constantly evaluating the child. So, have you heard about helicopter parenting? Okay. Have you heard about tiger parenting? Yes. Okay. Because nowadays also, because these four parenting styles are fruit of a study from like in mid-90s, okay? But recently, as I've said, they continue to study, so they have developed also new terminologies and new categories, but more or less they're similar, okay? So there's what they call tiger parenting and helicopter, because they say people can relate more than saying authoritarian, okay? Because when you hear the word tiger, you can imagine how it is, and a helicopter, okay? So the idea with this type of parenting is that there's very little freedom and autonomy for the child, because a parent could impose. They always tell the child what to do. And when the child asks, why? How come? And what's the answer of a parent who is authoritarian? Because I said so. Okay, just do it. Because I know better. Okay, which happens to us sometimes, even in mentoring. Okay, na lang. Because sometimes we also don't like being questioned, or it's hard to answer. It's not that we don't like being questioned, but probably we also don't know how to answer, right? So we just say, because I said so, just do it. Please, 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 but then it doesn't help the child because she doesn't get the reasons and the goals, the purpose of what she is doing. Okay, it values order and obedience, and then there's a lot of punishment and reward. Some weeks ago, I was with a child and the mother, so they always disagree, or they always have a quarrel because the child cannot be on time to go out for school. She takes a long time in the bathroom, the usual teenager, right? So what did the mom do? Okay, because it happens every day. So, but she knows we have to leave at this particular time because we have to go to another school and then to bring the other child to the school. So what did the mom do? So when the child, one day, again, she's not ready, so she left the child. Okay, so I said, so what happened? So how can she go to school? But miss, it's okay because there's a neighbor who also goes to the same school, so she can actually bring. So that she could learn her lesson. We will leave her if she's not ready by this time to go to school. Okay, so there's a lot. That type of parenting which has punishment and reward. And then, sorry, Erasmus. So punishment, no? And so the child, what did she do? No? So of course she couldn't understand, no? And then she told me, one time I was ready for school early. I was there waiting in the living room. And then what did the parents say? Oh, you're ready. Oh, what do you think? I will applaud you for being ready. So I pity the child, no? Kaluoy, because here she is trying her best to do what the parent does or what the parent expects of her, and she doesn't even receive a little bit of praise, no, for being ready, for being able to accomplish what the parent was expecting her, no, and even hearing something that's negative from the parent, no? So sometimes there are parents like this, or sometimes there are days when we can be like this to our children or to people we are with, maybe when we are in a bad mood, when we are irritated. But it's good to be aware of it, okay? So, next slide. Sorry. Yeah, okay. So, I'll just go back to the chart. So, if we are authoritarian in our parenting, we follow rigid rules and punishments, okay? There's no flexibility in how we impose our rules. There's a lot of vigilance, no, to the point of controlling the child. Hyperprotection, because we want something. Of course, we want the best for our child, but in the process, we tend to overprotect. Like, no, you cannot do that because that's bad for you. You cannot go on overnights with your friends. You cannot go to the movies alone with your friends. I'm not saying it could be done, okay? But of course, it's case-to-case basis. But that idea of no, because I think it's bad for you. Okay. And then respect for otherness. There's a lot of intrusion on the part of an authoritarian because imposing her rules, but also it could fall into rejection. because you don't respect that your child can actually make decisions for herself. And then affective implication, again, overprotection, availability. You're too available. Okay, you're invading already the privacy or the personhood of a person, no? Because you tend to decide for her, tell her what to do instead of helping her be the one to think for herself. Communication, again, it could be very imposing, and there's hyper demand. There's a lot of goals. Actually, I want you to have, I don't know, straight A's in school. I don't want you to have, I remember, I was talking with Queenie this morning. I was telling her, you know, come to think of it, I was thinking, actually my parents were a little authoritarian. Because my mom had this thing of, when she would review me for exam, I had to memorize the book. Memorize, literally. Like if it's about science, memorize it, and then she would make a sample exam for me, fill in the blanks, because she expects me to memorize the whole book. That was only in grade school. Thank God, when I reached high school, she already changed her teaching style. So she allowed me. Okay. And then, but there, you know, like, and then that's why also, like, and then she has this cut off for mistakes in your quarterly exams. So if you get 4 or 5 mistakes and above, she really she talks to you, like, what happened? She gets worried about it, you know? But mom, it's okay. Like, all of us got below 95%, etc. So, but thank God, she also has authoritative qualities. No? She's also very warm. She's very demanding in that sense. Okay, but yeah, we encounter parents like this, or maybe we are sometimes authoritarian in our parenting. So what's the effect on the child? So, studies have shown that authoritarian parenting can lead to negative developmental outcomes, such as aggression, delinquent behaviors, somatic complaints, depersonalization, and anxiety. Why? Because a child, when she encounters this type of parenting, again, because of all the expectations of the parent, she can develop to be perfectionist and anxious. Again, because of the too many demands imposed on her. So she grows up thinking, I have to be in a certain way. There's a certain standard that I have to meet. So there's always that anxiety that I have to be like that. Which is sad because sometimes we don't get to foster the talents or the strengths of a child because we have our own mold that we want a child to develop, right? And then, because of that also, there could also be a lot of submission. Submission because, okay, maybe a child, depending on her personality, but because the parents are like that, I will just submit to what the parents say. Or on the other extreme, a child could be rebellious. Because I don't think it's reasonable, so she doesn't follow. Okay? And then later on, when she grows up, she could have this negative effects, no, of being aggressive because that's the model that she has received. So modeling is also very important in parenting. Whatever a child sees, even if we think, she doesn't notice, no, they notice, they observe, and that sinks in to their psyche. So that kind of modeling makes a person also prone to being aggressive, having delinquent behaviors. Somatic complaints later on because of anxieties, depersonalization, like they seem to be not themselves. They go out of themselves. They don't know how to own to their particular, the consequences of their actions. Okay, so later on also when they become teachers or formators or parents, either they also practice the same parenting or formative style, which is authoritarian, not because consciously it's like a revenge. No, it's just that it's something that they have interiorized and that's what they know. Or they can follow the other extreme. They could be very permissive or even neglectful because they have experienced something negative and so, okay, I don't want my child to experience the same, so I will be more permissive, I will do the exact opposite of what I have received. Okay, next. Permissive. So these are the parents who love their child too much. So as we said a while ago, if you grew up with authoritarian parents, you can fall into this. Okay, because I don't want her to experience what I experienced. I love her so much. So I tend to be more permissive. So we are afraid to make the child suffer with demands to exert effort and experience discomfort. What they call this now is what you call the snowplow parents. Have you heard of that? So snow plowing, in winter, you take out all the snow, you take out all the obstacles for your child because you don't want them to be the one to suffer. Okay? Or what you call also free range or panda parenting. Okay? You snuggle the child, no? Or you give them a lot of freedom to the point of giving them also no rules at all. Okay? So the parents, with this in having the thought that, okay, maybe I could be friends with my child, which is also a good thing, right? To be friends with our children. But sometimes what suffers, we don't end up becoming parents. We lose that aspect of authority also because we cannot take that out because we are really authorities to our children, to your children. Okay. And then too much dialogue to the point of there's always negotiating. Like, what do you want? No, I don't want that. Okay, what do you want? What do you want? You know? And then thinking that the child will realize on his own when he commits mistakes. We are very tolerant of mistakes and defects, and there's little and inconsistent punishment. Next slide. So again, going back to the chart, with regards to rules and punishment, very permissive. As to vigilance, they could be neglectful, or sometimes there is attention. Protection, well, it could be in the midpoint, there could be care, but sometimes there could also be hyperprotection. Respect for otherness, indifference, no? Affective implication, there could be affection, but also sometimes overprotection or over-affection. Availability, there could be proximity, but sometimes there could be invasion. Like you decide for the child, I'll do this because I don't want you to suffer. I will solve this thing because I don't want you to make a problem out of it. Communication, a lot of colloquy without conclusions. Demand, there's little demand, so there's negligence. Again, it's also called indulgent because, as we said, because you love the child too much, you give in to what the child says. So these are parents also who probably had very little discipline as they were growing up, and so when if they're turned to parent, because no one is taught how to be a parent, right? So they just don't know also how to discipline the child, and so they turn out to be very permissive or indulgent. Right? They go with what the child wants or says. Okay. So what's the effect on a child when she receives permissive or negligent parenting? Okay. So permissive parenting is associated with internalizing and externalizing problem behavior. Internalizing meaning sometimes they can have high anxiety or high depression. Like they tend to internalize external problems. Like they blame themselves, okay, because they have little mettle for facing challenges because they didn't know how, because the parent was always there to solve the problem for them. And externalizing problem behavior. Externalizing is they could be very, they could express it in tantrums or delinquent behavior, but also with social skills and self-confidence, self-understanding, and active problem coping. Okay. I think this is low self-understanding. Yes. There is low social skills, low self-confidence, self-understanding, and active problem coping. Okay. And then let's go to the negligent. Okay. So this parenting style, they try to resolve educating obligations in the most rapid and easiest way possible, mostly indifferent with attitudes and behavior of child. For a negligent parent, there's very little rules in the house. They don't really care so much about what happens. Little demands. Sometimes it could happen that parents, they replace discipline, or they replace demands with material gifts. Like they cannot be there, but at least I gave them what they needed. Okay. Again, I was with a child some weeks back, and then she was caught in her school stealing. Okay, because she connived with another student. So apparently her friend told her, "You want to have an adventure? Okay. So let's sneak into the classroom." So, okay, what are we gonna do? Okay, let's get stuff from the bags of our classmates. So we started to get things from the bags of their classmates. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. No? So, but then anyway, since she didn't have any model of how it is to be disciplined, what are the rules, what are the values, so she thought, I thought I wasn't guilty about it. I'm not culpable because anyway, I wasn't the one getting. It was the other one, but she was there and she was agreeing. And then what the child, the one stealing, what she would do is to give the things, like she would ask this student, "So what do you like among these things that I got?" And then she offers. So of course the child was just too happy to get something. Okay, I like this. It's small things like pens. But somebody said, there was a time I think they got money also. Yeah. So she said, I thought I wasn't culpable because I was not the one getting the things from the bag. I was just receiving them. So for her, it's a gift, right? But there, no? But so I started to ask, okay, so how are you? How's your relationship with your parents? Who's there at home with you? Said, well, mostly it's just my helper, the usual, because my dad is a businessman, so he always goes out of town. My mom works in the corporate world, so she's hardly at home during the day. So there, no? That kind of parenting that the parents are absent, and so that child wasn't able to develop her own values for herself, no? To the point of seeing nothing wrong with getting someone else's possession, even if she was not the one getting it. Okay. So there. So rules and punishment, very permissive. There's little vigilance, no, to the point of neglect. There could be abandonment on the part of the parents because they're very busy, they don't have anything to do with their child. They leave the care to helpers or to grandparents, for example. Affective implication is very cold, they don't have that emotional connection with the child. Availability, again, absence. Silence in communication, because there actually very little, if any, communication with the child. No? Maybe because just a little, oh, what do you need? Okay, here it is. That's it. Demand, very little demand. So there's negligence as well. So what happens to these children? So lacking self-regulation, like in the case that I told you, no self-regulation, she just does what she wanted. And then lacking social responsibility, poor self-reliance and social competence, poor school competence as well, because maybe there's no one to monitor her, to help her, to guide her through school. Antisocial behavior and delinquency, like in what happened with this student I was telling you. Anxiety, depression, and somatic complaints. Because they also have very little self-esteem because they didn't experience nurturing affection from their parents. Okay. And then we go to the authoritative. Okay. Of course, this is the ideal type of parenting style. So in the authoritative, the parents are involved in educating their child, showing what is a mature way of doing things with reasoning and negotiation. So in authoritative, there's dialogue, okay, and there's explanation of why things are done. Okay. We try to make the child understand, okay, this one, the consequences are this, and this could happen to you, and this is what is good, that is bad, okay? And then there's also, according to the maturity of the child, of course, according to the age, because when a child is very young, you really have to tell things, right? But as the child reaches, like adolescence, one cannot anymore just tell her what to do, okay? There has to be a dialogue and try to see what is in her mind, and why do I say the things? So where are we? Okay, what could be good, or how do we reach a compromise between the two of us? Okay, and then, so these factors help, no, in authoritative parenting. There's parental involvement, okay, so very much present. Positive reinforcement. So the example a while ago, instead of questioning what are the motives of our child when she's able to do what we expect her, we praise. We give those little words of encouragement. Like, oh, good. Oh, you're ready today. You're early. Okay, that helps a lot in a child's development because she sees that she is valued, she is validated, she's affirmed when she does good. That's also part of reinforcement, precisely, because when she does good and she's praised, then it gives her motivation to do it again. So it's forming a habit. Rule setting. It's very important that there are rules and there is consistency in implementing those rules. Because if you give rules and then later on the child doesn't follow the rule and then you don't say anything, it's okay. I don't want to, I'm too tired, I don't want to have an argument with my child. So you let it be. Of course, the child, for her, since she was not reprimanded, then she will probably do it again. And then the next time, you reprimand her. You shout at her, you tell her, oh, don't do that again. Okay? So there's inconsistency. So we have to be consistent with our rules. So if we say like this, if we tell her, you won't be able to go to the party if you don't finish your homework, then we have to be consistent with that. Oh, and we cannot be, like moms or the, I don't know. Sometimes our hearts could melt when the child gives us that adorable face or paawa effect. So we also have to be firm with our decision because that helps also informing them. Okay, this is really what is good and this is what is really bad. Otherwise, they get confused in their values formation. Autonomy stimulating behavior. So according to the age of the child, of course, but we allow them to do what they can. As we saw in the film a while ago, we allow them to explore, according to the age, of course. So as a child, we allow them to play. Of course, we're there to guide or to assist if they need help or if they fall into an accident, they know that they can come back because the parent is there to care for them, to receive them back. The parent is there to welcome them. And then when the child also grows older, we also give more autonomy. Like of course, when they're already in their adolescence, the teenagers, they want autonomy to decide. Again, doesn't mean that, okay, you decide. Again, there's that aspect of parenting, which is to guide. So we can tell them, okay, this is what I think. These are possible consequences. Okay, you decide. Then I will support you and I will be here. If you commit a mistake, then we'll work on it together. Okay, so in the authoritative parenting, so everything is in the midpoint. So the rules and punishment, they're flexible. Flexible in the sense, not that, okay, versus inconsistency, okay? Flexible meaning according to the particular case. Again, of course, we have to evaluate the situation according to its circumstances, according to the age of the child. So it's flexible and not in the sense that, okay, one day it could be next time. No. Vigilance, there's a lot of attention, there's care, we accept the person for who she is, a lot of affection, there's proximity, but not invasion, there's proper dialogue, and proportionate demand. So what's the effect? So since this is the ideal, there are many positive effects of authoritative parenting. So authoritative parenting is associated with secure attachment, with positive model of self and others. So we were talking about security a while ago. So if you want a child to develop secure attachment, which would influence her relationships later on in the future, then authoritative parenting will help that. So there's a positive model of self. So there's a certain healthy self-esteem such that one can launch into the world independent, but also a positive model of others, meaning there's trust in other people. So they don't avoid having relationships. They also don't avoid showing their vulnerabilities because they have trust in other people. Okay, so next slide. It's also correlated with positive developmental outcomes in youth, such as psychosocial competence. So they're seen to be more mature, resilient. So when they're faced with challenges, they know how to get out of it. Even if they commit mistakes or errors, they know how to jump out of it. They are optimistic with life. They're self-reliant, social competence, and healthy self-esteem. Next slide. Then, Studies have shown also, again, we already know this, parenting style helps in attachment. So if you have authoritative parenting style, it could foster healthy, secure attachment. But they've also seen it to be connected with self-regulation. What is self-regulation? It's like self-mastery. It's knowing how to manage yourself in order to attain a certain goal. You have purpose. So these kids, they know what they want, they have a certain sense of purpose, and they can manage themselves in order to achieve that goal. Okay? And what's beautiful with self-regulation is it has many aspects. So you have the cognitive, because there's decision making, so a child knows how to think through things. But there's also that aspect of the will or the motivation, because it cannot just stay here like I know what is good, I know what to do, but a person may have difficulty in actually carrying it out. Maybe there's a lack of development in that aspect. So self-regulation is knowing the cognition, knowing why I need to do the thing, and also being able to carry it out in my actions. So if there is negative parenting style and insecure attachment, then negative or no self-regulation, what happens? This is when the problems of addiction come in. Gambling, not able to resist temptations, or when they are offered, like for example, in the case of the child, she doesn't know what is right or wrong, so she just went on with stealing. So there, a lot of addiction cases now, pornography also, is connected with this type of, or the lack of authoritative parenting style and insecure attachment. Okay. Again, it's children who have undergone authoritative parenting. They also develop, or their most adaptive achievement strategies characterized by low levels of failure expectations, low task irrelevant behavior and passivity, and the use of self-enhancing attribution. So, what does it mean? Again, there's healthy self-confidence, okay? So they don't enter a task or a job thinking that they're going to fail. Because children or adolescents who have low self-esteem can already have that at the onset, like, I'm not good at anything, or I'm not good at this. So they already expect themselves to fail. And then low task irrelevant behavior. So as we have said a while ago, there's a lot of sense of mission, a lot of sense of purpose for a child who has secure attachment. And use of self-enhancing attributions, meaning we attribute things that will help us. So, as we were saying a while ago, sometimes one can attribute to oneself things which are not actually her fault, or maybe she tends to blame herself. So a healthy person knows how to attribute to herself the things which are really under her accountability, or she's responsible for her actions. Like, okay, this happened wrong, or this thing turned out to be wrong because I did this. But for example, if it's another employee who committed a mistake, then you will blame yourself for it. Then that's not healthy attribution. Okay? And then emotional maturity and healthy relationships. So when there's secure attachment, as we have said a while ago, one can show her vulnerability and knows how to express her emotions. But, for example, if there was very little responsiveness, then a child may not be able to identify her emotions because, for example, in the authoritarian parenting, okay, she's afraid to somehow express her emotions. So all the while she was growing up, she could have that habit, such that later on, in her future relationships in adulthood, when she is faced with strong emotions like anger or even passion or relationships, in romantic relationships, she doesn't know how to express those emotions, and so she doesn't know how to relate with other people, and she cannot also ask for help because she cannot show her vulnerability. So that's emotional immaturity. But for someone who is secure about herself, then she can show herself as she is. She can identify what emotions she is going through, and she can show it. Like, it's okay if others see my vulnerable side because I know how to seek social support or help from other people. So that fosters healthy relationships. And at the same time, they have seen that authoritative parenting actually promotes cognitive and intellectual development because, right, it's about dialogue. So you give options to your child. So that range of options helps a child in her development, also in her thinking, to broaden. Unlike if you're very authoritarian, you only give this option, one option, because you need to do this. That doesn't trigger or stimulate the mind to develop. So she also has little stimulus for intellectual development because there's very restrictive range of options that are given to her in her childhood. So it's actually helpful to authoritative parenting. It also helps a child develop her way of thinking about things. Okay, so in summary, so therefore, if you look at this chart, obviously the ideal is the authoritative parenting. Okay, I won't go through this, but I guess some things which are notable. Okay, so as you already see, authoritative, almost everything is high. Okay. So social competence, autonomy, creativity, self-control, confidence, security, self-esteem. Realist, meaning we don't also want our children to be egoistic naman, diba? Too much self-confidence. Okay, we want them to be realistic. They know their strengths, but they also know their weaknesses. And they can work on those. No? They want to improve on those things because they're realists. They know what they're capable of doing. They don't take on everything because they think, I can do it. No, they also know how to say no. That's being realistic. And then, okay, as to their character, they are mature, cheerful, and spontaneous. And then, affective expressiveness is in the middle, meaning they're not so emotional, neither are they too isolated emotions. Morality. This is important. What we want is that they have high and intrinsic morality. What does it mean? High morality meaning they know, they have firm convictions of what is right or wrong. And it's intrinsic, meaning it's something that is within the person. You're not going to ask someone, what do you think? Is this right or wrong? Okay? Because some people or some children can decide just based on what others tell them. That's extrinsic. But when it is intrinsic, then they are the ones who can say for themselves, I want to do this because I see that it is good for me. I want because I see it as good for me. Not just because it's good, but they see that it's good for me. Okay? That's having high intrinsic morality. Okay. So, what is now my or your parenting style? Just these 3 quick questions might help us identify what is the parenting style that we employ. Do you prioritize your child's needs and feelings? Do you explain your expectations and reasons? Do you encourage open communication? So if your answer to these questions are yes, sabi ni sir, are yes, then most likely you are an authoritative parent. If there's a no in any of these questions, then you might fall into the other types of parenting. Okay? And if their answer is all yes, then you're doing a good job. If there's a no, you're still doing a good job because you want to learn. Okay? But it's something that you can think about. And I guess that's what's the purpose of this session, for all of us to reflect how we are as formators, as educators, as parents, and see, okay, what can I do? And that's our next slide. What can I do now? Okay, because maybe some people would think, you know, my child is already in high school, she's already adolescent. What can I do? Because maybe I've already somehow determined, you know, the child to be like that because I wasn't able to employ authoritative parenting early on. It's never too late. It's never too late, okay? Because we also, like imagine, I give this as an example. Imagine if your parent goes to you, or you receive a phone call or a letter from a parent, from your mom or your dad, saying that, I know I have hurt you a few times because I've done this. Maybe I wasn't able to address your needs in this particular scenario. I'm very sorry, and I would like to start over again. That helps us, even as adults, right? It could heal wounds which we may have back from our early years. So what more for children? Okay? Because they have more years to live and to develop themselves positively. But yeah, that entails also an effort on our part to do something. So what can we do? I will just give you some few practical tips, hopefully. Next slide. Okay. I start with self-reflection and understanding, which I think you're all doing now. Self-reflection, because we have to see where we are, how we are doing it, and understanding. Okay. Hopefully you also see why we are doing it the way we are doing it. Maybe because we have also undergone the same parenting, or maybe the opposite, that's why we do the other extreme. Or we have gone through things, or maybe we're just too tired, or we have our own problems to deal with. But it's good to understand ourselves. Okay, why do I do the things? Or how come I'm dealing with my child in this way? And then, to seek feedback and support. So, seek feedback from people you trust. So for example, of course you could ask your spouse. Like, I think your spouse would be the best to tell you how you are as a parent. Okay? And ask your children. I mean, of course, those who are already of reason. Like you can ask, what do you think? How do you see me as a mom? Am I too strict? Or how do you feel when I tell you this? Because children are usually very sincere and very spontaneous in their answers. So it's good to hear it from them. And you will have very interesting answers also. Okay. And then presence. Okay. I encourage everyone to rethink this. Are we present? Okay. Because this is one thing which makes a lot of difference. Just being present physically and emotionally. Because we can be present physically, like, I'm always there. Like when she's doing her assignment, I'm always by her side. Yeah, maybe. But are we there emotionally? Maybe you're physically present, but we could be in our cell phones, we could be in our laptops because we're also working. And okay, while I'm working, you also work there. Okay? But the child cannot even ask you a simple question like, Mom, how to do this? Or, is this correct? Yeah. Okay? So, we have to be physically and emotionally present with our children. So, it's also good to see, okay, examine ourselves. How much time do I give to my child in a week? Okay. Hopefully we can spend time also with them to enjoy. It's not just telling them to do things, like we don't just spend time and we need to tell them something. Like we have time to just explore also with them, to enjoy with them. I know some parents, they have family time of course, but there are also some parents who spend particular chunks of time with each child. I think that's very healthy. They have a date. Like I also hear of some children who tell me this, Miss, today I have a date with my dad or with my mom. Or this weekend I will go shopping or I will go to the grocery with my mom. Those are very healthy activities because they're outside, quote unquote, the realm of just saying, do this, do that. Okay? Like you also see what are the interests of your child. Okay? Like when they go to the grocery, where do they go first? They go to the health and beauty or they go to the food items. Okay? So it's very interesting. What do they choose? Do they like to read those healthy things? Like what are the components of the food that they get, etc. So it's very interesting. And of course, get to know your children's friends. That's also part of being present. That they know, my mom, my dad, she knows my friends. She knows so and so. She knows that when I go out, I will go with this person. Okay. Then communication. Okay. A lot of things are solved by communication. And what is communication? Okay, it's two-way. It's a dialogue. We cannot just be the one talking. Okay, a lot of times, people or parents will say, I can't understand my child, especially the teenagers. Have we tried to sit down, really sit down and spend time just listening and asking, okay, what's going on with you? Like, well, how's life? What do you do when you're in your free time? What do you do with your friends? Okay? So it's good to do the active listening when we talk to the children. It's very important to know how to communicate. Repair. I saw this TED Talk talking about this. That, again, her premise is that there's never too late to start well in parenting. But she emphasizes this aspect of repair. Okay? Repair because you all want the best for your children. And I think you're trying to do that. Okay? But of course, we're not perfect. No one is perfect. And there's no perfect parent. Okay? And that's why it's very important to recognize and to admit that first to ourselves, and it's also good to admit that to our children. That we are not perfect, we have committed mistakes. And to repair is actually to acknowledge what particular mistake we have done. It cannot be like in a general thing, okay, I'm sorry for the past, 14 years of your life. No. We have to be very specific to repair. And we have to be very quick in it. We cannot just let things pass. For example, you had a disagreement with your child, and then she locks herself in her room, and you just let her be. Just let time pass until she cools down. Well, maybe sometimes yes, but we cannot let a week pass without talking to our child about that particular incident. Sometimes she could be passive, right? Like, that will pass. In a few days she will forget it and will be okay again. Yes, it could happen, but making a repair of that particular incident makes a difference. How is it? For example, okay, I'll give an example. Of course, I don't have a child, but this is somehow similar, I hope. The other day, I was talking to we were just casually talking with people in my house. And then we were talking about the times when we would watch movies in our house. And then, so we were saying, okay, I'll just come in late because I have something to do, etc. So innocently, I just blurted out, you're never naman on time when we watch movies in our house. I was thinking, maybe because you're really not interested in watching movies, or you don't care if you come punctually or not. Okay, then that's it. And then I saw she became quiet. But anyway, we just continued to talk, but I saw a change in the expression of her face. So I said, oh, maybe I shouldn't. I thought maybe I shouldn't have said that. Or maybe I was too, unmindful. So anyways, I was not thinking about it. So in the evening before sleeping, maybe because also I'm the type who couldn't sleep when I'm affected. So I went up to her. I said, hey, I'm sorry for what I said a while ago. I wasn't too mindful. I think I have hurt you because I saw the change of expression in your face. I'm so sorry I wasn't too mindful of my words. Next time, I will try to think first before saying something. And then you know what she told me? She said, it's okay, I needed it. And that's it. It was resolved. But what could have happened if I just let it be? Maybe nothing would happen negatively. Maybe she would still, I'm sure she would still talk to me the next day. Okay? But there was a difference because on my part, okay, it helped me. And on her part, she also realized something about herself, but also, she also saw the importance of knowing how to rectify, knowing how to say can make a difference that would be significant in her life many years from now. So what's the formula? I gave you that particular dialogue. In general, I don't know, it's a suggestion you can follow. One is to recognize the error. What is it in that particular incident, situation that went wrong? I shouted at you, or I didn't mind you when you asked for help. Concretely, no? And then, take responsibility, accountability for your action. Like, it's different just to say, I'm sorry, that's it. No? But to say, no, I'm sorry because that day I was too tired, I wasn't thinking, I didn't want to get bothered, so I just didn't mind you. So there's accountability. Like, the child would see, you know the consequence of your actions and where your actions came from and what are the consequences. And then, to follow it with a call for action. Like, okay, tell the child also, okay, I will try to, when I'm tired, maybe I will also say, relax more and then be able to talk to you afterwards. So that the child also sees the effort, you know, that we have to be also models for our children. Like they know, okay, it cannot be the same all the time, although of course maybe we will do it again another time, but at least they know that we will do something about it, right? So to recognize it, take responsibility, and say what you can do to prevent that particular incident. So that's to repair. So it's different from saying, I apologize, pero kasi siguro if you followed me, hindi tayo mag-aaway. That's not repair. That's adding salt to injury. Okay? So, there. And then, take care of yourself. A lot of times, we do things wrongly because we're just too tired. We're exhausted. Because of the different or the demands of life. So, again, as we have said, parenting is not easy, it's also demanding. So that's added to the workload that we have perhaps. So learn how to take care of yourself, to relax. Because if one knows how to take care, if you're not stressed, then it's easier to deal with your children, right? But if you're already stressed from the outset, then what do you expect? Of course, when a child poses some challenges to you in terms of parenting, then we're only humans, of course. Sometimes it's difficult. So sometimes the natural instincts just come out. You know, that we can shout, we can be irritated, or we can be passive if that's our comfort zone also. So learn how to take care of yourselves, because in taking care of yourself, then you can take care of people better. Okay, I think that's my last slide. So, as we said, parenting is not about perfection, but exploration. It's finding out what works and what does not, and adjusting accordingly. Acknowledging we have faulted is not shameful, but courageous. So with that, thank you.